In the sport of boxing, it is only the greatest who earn their place in the annals of history. Only the outstanding who put their names forth to stand the test of time and join a league of boxing immortality. In this video, we'll be taking a look at fighters past and present who have gone on to achieve the feat of becoming a 4-weight world champion in the sport. It's important to say that in boxing, witnessing a fighter become a 4-weight world champion is something that only really happens a handful of times in a generation. For the best, jumping up or down in weight to capture a world title is fairly commonplace in the sport. However, winning a world title in 4 separate weight divisions is an accolade reserved for the most elite of their time. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Number 1. Thomas Hearns. A widely recognised fighter from the 80s and 90s, he was the first to achieve the feat of becoming a 4-weight division champion. Thomas Hearns showed great potential in the boxing ring from a young age, under the tutelage of the great Kronk trainer Emanuel Stewart, and went on to create a legacy that is still talked about to this day. Throughout his career, Hearns went on to win the WBA welterweight title, WBC junior middleweight title, before going on to win the WBC light heavyweight and middleweight titles, before going on to surpass this, becoming a 5-division world champion. He was known for his rangy style and threw with thudding power, very much living up to the Kronk philosophy of going for the knockout. Not to mention, he also made lots of successful defences against some of the best of his generation. Although Hearns had names such as Wilfred Benitez and Roberto Duran on his record, his most famous bout happened in 1985 against marvellous Marvin Hagler, where the two would slug it out in 3 rounds and give fans one of the best fights we've ever seen take place in a boxing ring. Number 2. Sugar Ray Leonard. Another legend of the sport and a former opponent of Thomas Hearns was the great Sugar Ray Leonard. Leonard was a tremendous amateur, winning gold at the 1976 Olympics in Montreal, which sent him to stardom. Leonard would then compete professionally from 1977 to 1997, and in this time he created history, putting his name down as one of the greatest boxers to ever lace up the gloves, especially when you consider he was the only one to defeat 3 of the 4 kings in his era: Duran, Hearns, and Marvin Hagler. Leonard, though, was a fighter that made the sweet science look easy at times, and could make great fighters look like novices. After fighting some iconic names of his generation, Sugar Ray went on to become the undisputed welterweight champion, WBC middleweight champion, WBC super middleweight champion, before winning the WBA junior middleweight title. Sugar Ray Leonard has had many famous moments in the ring, but if you had to pick one, you'd probably have to say his fight with Thomas Hearns in 1981 is the one that stands out from the rest. It is one of boxing's great fights and was even voted 1981's Fight of the Year by the Ring magazine. Number 3. Roberto Duran. A former opponent of Hearns and Leonard was the Hands of Stone from Panama, and he would be the first Latino 4-weight world champion. Duran, known for his no-nonsense style, was one of the greatest inside fighters we've ever seen. Compared to the other 4-weight world champions we'll be discussing today, Duran has not only the most professional victories to his name, 103, but also the most knockouts on his record, of 70. During his long career, he held world championships in 4 weight classes, at lightweight, welterweight, light middleweight, and middleweight, while he even competed at light heavyweight at one point. His most notable win has to be his first meeting with the unbeaten and Olympic gold medalist Sugar Ray Leonard. Duran, moving up from lightweight, came into the fight as a huge underdog, with the bookies feeling Leonard would have too much room. Duran went on to put one of the performances of his life, proving the doubters wrong with a victory that shook the boxing world. Before we dive deeper into this list, let me introduce you to our sponsor, Pro Boxing, the all-in-one training platform designed for beginners, experienced fighters, and personal trainers. Choose from dozens of skill-based training modules and develop into a complete fighter faster. The new app version 1.6 has a visual training guide to help you learn and integrate new techniques systematically. Get into fighting shape anywhere, design custom workouts, and select your own recovery exercises. Download Pro Boxing today and dominate the opposition. Use the code below for an exclusive discount from Boxing Life. Number 4. Pernell Whitaker. Some 14 years after Duran made his debut in boxing, saw the emergence of another generational talent, Pernell Whitaker, the first southpaw on this list. After winning a gold medal at the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics, Pernell Whitaker promised to do great things in the professional ranks, and he certainly didn't disappoint. During his career, Sweet Pea won the undisputed lightweight title, junior welterweight, and junior middleweight championships. Whitaker was a slick southpaw and was widely regarded as the best defensive fighter of all time, even though he was just as good offensively in my opinion. Pernell to this day still holds the record for the longest unified lightweight championship reign of 6 title defenses. Many aspects of his style still show up in boxing today, and his impact on the sport's defensive side of the game is undeniable. He was in fact one of Mayweather's inspirations when growing up. Number 5. Oscar de la Hoya. One man that actually handed Whitaker his second professional loss was another 4-division world champion that had an immense impact on the sport. Oscar de la Hoya was an exciting come-forward fighter that was famed for his combination punching, vicious jab, and dangerous lead left hook. As a professional, Oscar has some of boxing's most famous names on his record, while being involved in some of the biggest fights of his time. Names such as Floyd Mayweather Jr, Manny Pacquiao, Julio Cesar Chavez, and Pernell Whitaker. He ended up finishing with an impressive record of 45 fights, 39 wins, with 30 of those coming by knockout, against some of the best of the time. De La Hoya captured the lightweight, junior welterweight, and junior lightweight championships, and there's no denying he's one of the most impactful fighters of his generation, being voted boxing's pound for pound number 1 fighter by the Ring magazine in 97 and 98. Number 6. Leo Gámez. Another 4-division world champion that fans today might not be too familiar with is the Venezuelan boxer Leo Gámez. Gámez is the first boxer in history to win titles in boxing's 4 lightest weight divisions and is one of the greatest fighters to come from Venezuela. He held the WBA minimum title, light flyweight, and super flyweight titles, while he boxed all over the world throughout his career. He was known for his devastating power, and Gámez boasted 26 knockouts in his 35 victories. Considering the lighter weights he competed in, a knockout ratio of 70% is almost unprecedented, and he is a name on this list that can't be left out. Number 7. Roy Jones Jr. A name that most fans certainly will be familiar with, and is highly regarded by some of boxing's greats. Roy Jones had an illustrious career, beating the likes of James Toney, Bernard Hopkins, and Mike McCallum along the way. He's considered to be one of the greatest boxers of his time, and the first former middleweight champion to win a heavyweight world title in over 100 years. During his peak, Jones was near impossible to beat, and simply made boxing look like he had the cheat codes to a video game. His defensive qualities were immaculate, and he possessed cat-like reflexes which set up many of the greatest counterpunch knockouts. His run from 1994 to 2003 saw him pick up titles at middleweight, super middleweight, light heavyweight, and heavyweight. Number 8. Floyd Mayweather Jr. Probably one of the most famous names on this list. Mayweather was arguably the most talented and impactful fighter of his generation, and is widely considered to be in conversation to be one of the best fighters to ever live. He was involved in some of boxing's biggest nights, and was responsible for generating pay-per-view numbers this game had never thought possible. For Floyd, big fights were somewhat of a regular occurrence, and despite fighting a number of the world's best boxers at the time, as he remained undefeated through his 50 professional bouts. He won 15 major world championships as well, spanning 5 weight classes, from super featherweight all the way to light middleweight. In his early career, he was known as Pretty Boy Floyd, using a far more aggressive Philly shell style. However, as hand injuries persisted, he changed up his style, becoming a defense-first fighter, as he took the persona of Money Mayweather. There's no debating that Floyd perfected this style though, and found the answer to every fighter he stepped in the ring with. Floyd's most memorable wins include the likes of Manny Pacquiao, Canelo Alvarez, Shane Mosley, Oscar de la Hoya, who all couldn't figure out the puzzle of Floyd Mayweather. Number 9. Manny Pacquiao. In arguably the biggest fight of the century, Floyd faced off against another legend of the sport in Pac-Man Manny Pacquiao, the greatest ever fighter from the Philippines and maybe the most skilled fighter of his era. Manny Pacquiao is an icon both inside and outside the ring. Pacquiao is the only 8-division world champion in the history of boxing and has won 12 major titles. Some of these included the flyweight title, super bantamweight title, and junior lightweight title, and the lineal featherweight title. In 2019, Pacquiao also became the oldest welterweight world champion at the age of 40 as he beat Keith Thurman. His southpaw stance, ringcraft, speed, skill stand the test of time in many ways, and it's quite possible we'll never see a fighter of Manny Pacquiao grace the squared circle again. His legacy will live on and will be talked about for years to come, and the fact he won titles in so many divisions is truly the stuff of legends. Number 10. Erik Morales. a man who handed Manny Pacquiao his third professional loss, and also went on to become the first Mexican 4-division world champion. During his reign, Morales defeated 15 world champions, and is most famed for his trilogy against Barrera and Pacquiao. He won titles at super bantamweight, featherweight, junior lightweight, and junior welterweight divisions, and there's no denying he encapsulated the famous Mexican style to a T. But with that extra flair to his style, Morales embodied that true grit, aggression, and fearlessness inside the ring. He was actually voted 49 in the 50 greatest boxers of all time by ESPN, while he was inducted in the Boxing Hall of Fame in 2018. Number 11. Jorge Arce. Another Mexican warrior etched his name in boxing history as a 4-division world champion. Competing from 1996 to 2014, Arce became a fan favourite due to his relentless pressure and all-action style, and willingness to engage in wars inside the ring. Second only to Erik Morales, he was one of Mexico's earliest fighters to achieve the rare feat of winning world titles in 4 divisions. Despite suffering a loss in just his 5th professional fight, Arce rebounded to forge an incredible career, capturing titles from flyweight to super bantamweight, and these involved classic moments, including his rivalry with Hussein, along with his brutal knockout victory over Wilfredo Vazquez Jr. to become a 4-weight world champion. There is no doubt Arce always left everything in the ring. Number 12. Juan Manuel Marquez. When discussing Mexico's greatest fighters, Marquez is a name that demands recognition. A simply masterful technician and one of the finest counterpunchers in boxing history, Marquez fought at the highest level for 2 decades, sharing the ring with some of the sport's biggest names. Over the course of 64 fights, Marquez compiled a record of 56 wins, 7 losses and 1 draw, capturing world titles in 4 weight divisions, from featherweight all the way to super lightweight. His ability to adapt, outthink opponents, and deliver punishing counters made him one of the most feared and respected fighters of his era. Arguably his defining moment was his 4th bout in his legendary rivalry with Manny Pacquiao. Marquez showcased his resilience and ring IQ, setting up a trap for Pacquiao before detonating a perfectly timed fight-ending right hand, and what is probably one of the most brutal knockouts we've ever seen. Marquez, though, was more than just a 4-division world champion. He was a thinking man's fighter, and a warrior who blended technical brilliance with Mexican grit, and someone who gave us some unforgettable battles that defined an era of boxing. Number 13. Nonito Dair. Dair, known as the Filipino Flash, is someone that doesn't get the plaudits he deserves at times, and he still remains the oldest boxer in history to win a bantamweight world title, as well as the first 3-time champion in that division. Over the course of his illustrious career, Dair compiled a record of 50 fights with 42 wins, 28 by knockout so far. While he's competed against the very best fighters of his era, getting notable victories over Montiel and even Arce, who is on this list, while facing other top champions such as Carl Frampton and the legendary Cuban fighter Rigondeaux, while he arguably gave Naoya Inoue his toughest fight to date. Dair's style was a rare blend of technical precision, explosiveness, and devastating power, making him one of the most feared punchers in the lighter divisions at one point. His signature left hook became one of boxing's most destructive weapons, capable of turning fights in an instant. If you're someone that wants to set up the left hook, he's one of the go-to fighters to watch. Number 14. Miguel Cotto. The Puerto Rican legend is one of boxing's most loved figures, while also becoming the first Puerto Rican boxer to win world titles in 4 weight classes. He really made a name for himself in the early stages of his career as a hard-hitting pressure fighter, but later went on to refine his style as a beautiful boxer-puncher in the divisions he fought. Cotto won titles at super lightweight, welterweight, super welterweight, and middleweight. Not to mention, he has some impressive names on his record, including Shane Mosley, Sergio Martinez, Paulie Malignaggi, but maybe the most satisfying of them all was his revenge rematch with Margarito, who had beaten Cotto in the first fight and soon after got caught for illegal hand wraps and having PEDs in his system. Cotto went on to put on one of the most satisfying victories we've seen in boxing history. While there's no denying Cotto shied away from any fights, fighting the likes of Floyd Mayweather, Manny Pacquiao and Canelo, despite coming up short against them. He will go down in history as a fan favourite, as well as a Puerto Rican boxing icon. Number 15. Adrien Broner. An outspoken, talented and sometimes controversial fighter that went on to achieve the status of becoming a 4-weight world champion is the problem, Adrien Broner. In actual fact, the nickname certainly alludes to the colourful career Broner had, but despite his personality outside the ring, the skill and talent he showed in the ring were undeniable. as he was even considered as the next Mayweather at one point. After having over 300 fights as an amateur, Broner promised great things heading into the professionals, and he goes into the professionals as a fighter that certainly maybe didn't live up to the hype he was given, and he was maybe certainly found out by Marcus Maidana in his first defeat in 2013, as he always just seemed to fall short when he faced the other top opposition. Although not retired yet, it's clear his glory days are now behind him. During those prime years, Broner captured titles from junior lightweight all the way to junior welterweight. Number 16. Roman Gonzalez. Nicaraguan, aka Chocolatito, also makes this list after winning titles at the minimum weight title, light flyweight, flyweight and super flyweight divisions. Not to mention, he's the first Nicaraguan fighter to win titles in 4 separate weight classes, surpassing his mentor and idol, former 3-weight world champion Alexis Arguello, and one of my favourite fighters who just fell short when facing Aaron Pryor. In his prime, Gonzalez was one of the best fighters we've ever seen, and in 2017 was actually ranked number 1 pound for pound by the Ring magazine. He had a fundamental approach, which was extremely effective due to his aggressiveness, boxing IQ and technique. At one point, he seemed absolutely unstoppable, beating the likes of Estrada, Quadras, before coming up short against Rungvisai, and was maybe never really the same fighter after those defeats. However, he certainly turned back the clock in his victories over Cal Yafai and Julio Cesar Martinez, while was potentially very unlucky not to get the decisions in the final 2 bouts of his trilogy with Estrada. One thing is for sure, he'll go down as one of the greatest fighters to come out of the flyweight divisions. 17. Mikey Garcia. Coming from a tough upbringing marked by crime and poverty, Mikey Garcia found his path through boxing, which definitely was guided by his older brother and former world champion and elite trainer, Robert Garcia. Mikey developed into one of the most technically sound boxers of his era, showcasing brilliant fundamentals, high ring IQ, and exceptional composure under pressure. Garcia became a 4-division world champion, capturing titles from featherweight to light welterweight, while even dared to be great, challenging the feared Errol Spence Jr. at the time in a sold-out stadium in Texas, only to fall short. His methodical, patient approach made him a nightmare for opponents. With sharp counterpunching, textbook combinations, and a disciplined defensive approach, Garcia's efficiency in the ring was his greatest weapon, and he backed himself against anyone, thriving in high-level matchups. Maybe not the best of his generation, he does have some notable victories against the likes of Adrien Broner, Jesse Vargas, and Juan Manuel Lopez. While he may not be the flashiest fighter on this list, Mikey Garcia showed us mastery of the fundamentals can lead you to a great career. Number 18. Donny Nees. The second Filipino boxer on this list is another that maybe doesn't get enough credit. During his time as a professional, he held titles at minimum weight, light flyweight, flyweight and super flyweight, while he also became the longest reigning Filipino boxer in 2014, surpassing the legendary Filipino boxer Gabriel Elorde, and goes down alongside Manny Pacquiao as a Filipino boxing legend. Whilst not possessing the most exciting boxing style, Nietes was extremely effective, hardly giving anything away through his defensive style, and it's easy to see why Nietes fulfilled his potential and became a 4-weight world champion. Number 19. Kazuto Ioka. One of Japan's most accomplished yet overlooked champions, Ioka has quietly built up an elite legacy in the lighter weight classes. With a professional record of 35 fights and 31 wins so far, Ioka has captured world titles across 4 divisions, from minimum weight to super flyweight, cementing his place among Japan's all-time greats. Boxing runs in his blood, as he was the nephew of former flyweight champion Hiroyuki Ioka. However, has very much carved his own path, making history early in his career, with his breakthrough moment coming in 2012, when he faced fellow Japanese champion Akira Yagashi in a high-stakes unification bout for the unified mini flyweight title. In a dramatic, action-packed fight that captivated the Japanese boxing scene, Ioka emerged victorious, marking the first time 2 Japanese fighters had ever met to unify world titles. Ioka is known for his technical brilliance, precise counterpunching, and his methodical approach, and has continued to compete at the highest level, taking elite opposition and proving that Japan's boxing tradition remains strong as ever. Number 20. Leo Santa Cruz. A relentless warrior with an engine like few others, Leo Santa Cruz was one of the most dynamic fighters of his generation, and is maybe one of the least appreciated Mexican fighters on this list, winning titles at bantamweight, super bantamweight, featherweight and junior lightweight in an impressive 41-fight professional career. Santa Cruz built up a reputation of relentless pressure, high volume punching, and an underrated ability to make adjustments mid-fight. He possessed an incredible work rate, often overwhelming opponents with sheer activity, while carefully breaking them down over time. One of his defining moments came in 2017 when he avenged his first career loss to Carl Frampton, a former 2-division champion. Despite being known for that knockout loss to Tank Davis, he truly is an excellent fighter that had the grit of a true Mexican warrior with intelligence of a seasoned tactician. 21. Saul Canelo Alvarez. Another Mexican fighter who could very well be the best among them all, and one of the faces of boxing, is of course Canelo, and he certainly needs no introduction as he still potentially is the single biggest name in boxing today. His resume is phenomenal, and he remains an icon in Mexico as a shining beacon for the sport of boxing. In the ring, Canelo is famed for his counterpunching, pressure, head movement, and shot selection, not to mention his ability to break down some of the world's most talented fighters with relative ease. Not only has Canelo won championships from light middleweight to light heavyweight, he's also unified titles in 3 of those weight classes, and won lineal titles in 2. And it is hard to pick single notable fights for Saul, but his wins over Gennady Golovkin, Sergey Kovalev, and Billy Joe Saunders have to have a special mention. There's no denying Canelo is one of the greatest fighters of this generation. 22. Naoya Inoue. Another pound-for-pound star that's on this list is of course the Monster. He's respected amongst boxing's hardcore fans, and is truly considered one of the best in the lower weight divisions, not to mention this generation in the 4-belt era. So far, he remains unbeaten, having captured titles at light flyweight, super flyweight, along with being a 2-time undisputed champion at bantamweight and super bantamweight, which is truly extraordinary. With a current knockout percentage of over 80%, he's one of the biggest punchers we've ever seen in the lighter weights, and he certainly lives up to the moniker of the Monster. He's not just powerful, he also possesses brilliant technique, skill, and ring IQ that gets underappreciated by some. You could make the case that he's in his peak years now, and promises to be one of boxing's all-time greats if he continues to level up and prove himself against the very best. 23. Kozai Tanaka. The third Japanese fighter on this list is maybe not the most well known or decorated as the likes of Naoya Inoue or Ioka. Tanaka has had one of the fastest, most successful rises in World Championship boxing. In just his 5th fight, Tanaka became Japan's fastest ever fighter to become a world champion. Along with Vasyl Lomachenko, he's the fastest ever fighter to win titles in 3 weight classes, accomplishing this in just his 12th professional fight. Similar to his countryman in Inoue, his style is grounded with swift footwork, fast combinations, and remarkable athleticism. He has wins in the minimum weight, light flyweight, and super flyweight divisions, and despite a recent loss, he's still one of the brightest talents in the sport, and he definitely still has more years in his career to create more history. Number 24. Terence Crawford. Last but certainly not least on this list is none other than Terence Bud Crawford. Since his mega fight with Errol Spence Jr. to become undisputed in 2023, Bud has crossed over into the casual market and is now considered not only the greatest fighter in boxing today, but also one of his most recognizable names. Over the last 5 years, Bud has developed his craft to become a superb technical boxer-puncher, who is one of the most complete fighters we've ever seen in the boxing ring. Not to mention, he can fight out of both stances. Crawford is currently undefeated, having picked up titles at lightweight, junior welterweight, and junior middleweight, along with being a 2-time undisputed champion. A feat you can't ignore for greatness. And there's no denying that his victory over Errol Spence Jr. was the defining moment of his career as he completely dominated him. It's now important to look at potential future 4-weight world champions. Becoming a 4-weight world champion, as clearly seen in this list, is an exclusive club reserved for the most elite. Though, occasionally less talented fighters can get there too, especially if there's weaker fighters in the division. However, I want to discuss some potential 4-weight world champions in the future. A fighter from Japan is just 1 world title away from doing so is Junto Nakatani. Nakatani currently joins Japan's current crop of sensational fighters to hold world championships in 3 weight classes. Currently flyweight, junior bantamweight, and bantamweight, he's similar to the likes of Inoue and Tanaka. Nakatani is a southpaw and a handful in the ring. With his sneaky jab, speedy footwork, and versatile left hand, I wouldn't be surprised if we see him become a 4-weight world champion sooner rather than later. However, if you had to put money on it right now, America is probably the most likely host of boxing's next 4-division champion. Maybe the most talented of them all right now is Shakur Stevenson, a decorated amateur who won silver at the Olympics in 2016 while holding multiple world championships from featherweight to lightweight. As he potentially enters his peak years, Stevenson looks to be involved in some of boxing's most mouth-watering matchups, especially fights with the likes of Teofimo Lopez, Ryan Garcia, Devin Haney, or Gervonta Davis. While another of America's brightest talents is Jesse Bam Rodriguez. At the age of 24, He's already won titles at flyweight and super flyweight and has been described as having a perfect style for those lighter weight divisions, not to mention he's also a southpaw. Whether it's defense, offense, counterpunching, outboxing, or straight up going to war on the inside, Bam is someone that can do it all, and although he still has more work to do, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets there sooner rather than later too. Some other notable mentions that I think could potentially do it in the future are Teofimo Lopez, who's already a 2-division world champion, while Jerome Boots Ennis is currently a welterweight champion, but is huge for the weight, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see him move up the weight divisions as he gets older. As you can see from this list, becoming a 4-weight world champion in boxing at any weight during any time period is an achievement that history simply can't argue with. Although there are more weight divisions in the modern era, which didn't allow past champions to get this feat, you still have to applaud anyone achieving this, as only 24 have been able to do so in all of boxing history, and I'm excited to see who can achieve this feat next. This has been Jamie from Boxing Life. Thank you so much for watching. I'd love to hear your thoughts on who you think is the greatest 4-weight world champion, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.